Do you think everyone around the world loves Americans?
Think again.
From political disagreements to cultural clashes, some nations hold deep resentment toward the United States. But which countries have the strongest anti-American sentiments, and why? Stick around as we reveal the surprising reasons behind this global tension.
Number 10.
For decades, U.S.-Russia relations have been shaped by Cold War rivalry, and public opinion reflects that tension even today. Surveys by Pew Research consistently show high levels of anti-American sentiment among Russians, often above 65% unfavorable ratings in recent years. Many Russians view the U.S. as a geopolitical adversary due to NATO expansion and sanctions on Russia's economy. The Ukraine conflict intensified this dislike, with state-controlled media portraying America as the enemy. Historical memory of Cold War espionage and nuclear standoffs still plays a big role in shaping views. Moreover, Russians often criticize American cultural dominance, seeing Hollywood and Western pop culture as eroding traditional values. The U.S. sanctions following Crimea's annexation made many Russians associate Americans with economic hardships. There's also resentment over perceived U.S. interference in Russian domestic politics. Russian propaganda amplifies these narratives daily, influencing how people view Americans. Interestingly, personal experiences with tourists are often positive, but political discourse dominates the bigger picture. American ideals like democracy are sometimes viewed as hypocritical when compared to U.S. foreign interventions. The dislike is largely political, but it spills over into cultural perceptions. Younger Russians, however, tend to be more open-minded, but overall distrust remains high.
Number 9.
Iran's strained relationship with the U.S. dates back to the 1953 CIA-backed coup that overthrew Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh, creating long-lasting resentment. After the 1979 Iranian Revolution and the U.S. embassy hostage crisis, hostility toward America became a major theme in Iranian politics. "Death to America" has been a common slogan used by the Iranian government to rally support against Western influence. Sanctions have crippled Iran's economy for decades, and many citizens associate these hardships with U.S. policies. Iran sees America as the biggest obstacle to its regional ambitions, particularly regarding its nuclear program. State-controlled media promotes anti-American narratives, fueling public distrust. According to Pew surveys, Iranian unfavorable views of the U.S. regularly exceed 70%. Historical wounds, like support for Saddam Hussein during the Iran-Iraq War, further sour attitudes. Despite this, many young Iranians admire American culture and education but remain wary of U.S. politics. Iranian leadership uses anti-Americanism as a political tool to unite citizens under nationalism. Religious leaders often frame the U.S. as a moral threat to Islamic traditions. This long history of grievances ensures that anti-American sentiments stay alive in Iran.
Number 8.
North Korea's animosity toward Americans is deeply rooted in the Korean War, which devastated the peninsula and killed millions. The ruling Kim dynasty has built its entire political ideology around portraying the U.S. as an imperialist aggressor. State propaganda relentlessly blames America for all of North Korea's economic hardships, isolation, and sanctions. Public opinion is shaped entirely by government narratives, as there's no free media or outside information. The U.S. military presence in South Korea is portrayed as an ongoing threat, reinforcing hatred among North Koreans. School children are taught from a young age that Americans are enemies trying to destroy their country. Nuclear tensions and military drills between the U.S. and South Korea further feed this narrative. The Korean War armistice was never replaced with a peace treaty, so technically the war never ended, adding to the hostility. Kim regime propaganda even features caricatures of Americans in cartoons and posters as villains. North Korea also uses anti-American sentiment to justify its strict military-first policies. Ordinary citizens have no opportunity to interact with Americans, so perceptions remain one-dimensional and hostile. The regime's survival depends on maintaining this narrative. Thus, North Korea ranks among the most anti-American nations in the world.
Number 7.
Pakistan's relationship with the U.S. is complicated, swinging between partnership and mistrust for decades. Many Pakistanis resent American drone strikes that have killed civilians in tribal areas, fueling anti-American sentiment. Pew Research surveys have shown unfavorable views of the U.S. above 70% in the past. The U.S. support for military dictatorships in Pakistan also created resentment among pro-democracy citizens. After September 11, Pakistan became a U.S. ally, but the war on terror brought immense domestic suffering. Many believe America uses Pakistan for its own interests without respecting its sovereignty. The U.S. raid that killed Osama bin Laden inside Pakistan without informing authorities worsened mistrust. America's close relationship with India, Pakistan's rival, also adds to the dislike. Economic sanctions and aid suspensions by Washington have been seen as humiliating by many Pakistanis. Western cultural influence is often viewed as a threat to Islamic values. Anti-American protests are common, fueled by religious and political parties. However, like elsewhere, Pakistani youth are more divided, with many admiring American technology and education opportunities. Still, the broader narrative remains skeptical of U.S. intentions. This mix of politics, religion, and history makes anti-Americanism prevalent. Number 6. Turkey is a NATO ally of the United States, but public opinion toward Americans is often negative. Surveys regularly show that over 70% of Turks have unfavorable views of the U.S., driven by political and historical reasons. Many Turks blame America for supporting Kurdish groups in Syria, which Turkey views as terrorists. The 2016 coup attempt in Turkey led by a faction of the military intensified anti-Americanism, with accusations that the U.S. harbored cleric Fethullah Gulen, whom Turkey blames for the plot. U.S. sanctions on Turkey's economy, particularly over defense deals with Russia, have further fueled resentment. Turkish media often portrays America as meddling in Turkey's domestic politics. Cultural conservatism in Turkey also clashes with Western liberalism, feeding skepticism of American values. Historical grievances from the Cold War era linger, with many Turks believing they were used as pawns in U.S. strategy. Anti-American protests are frequent, especially when U.S. policies affect Muslim-majority countries. However, Turkey's tourism industry means Turks interact positively with individual Americans, creating a complex dynamic. While people appreciate American brands and entertainment, political hostility dominates headlines. This duality makes Turkey's anti-American sentiment nuanced yet deeply ingrained.
Number 5.
Venezuela's dislike of Americans has grown significantly since the rise of Hugo Chavez in the late 1990s. Chavez built his political platform on anti-U.S. rhetoric, calling America an imperial power. The U.S. has imposed economic sanctions on Venezuela, worsening the country's economic crisis. Many Venezuelans blame America for their financial hardships, even though domestic mismanagement plays a large role. Anti-American sentiment is fueled by state-controlled media portraying the U.S. as trying to overthrow the government. The U.S. recognition of opposition leader Juan Guaidó instead of Nicolas Maduro further angered many Venezuelans. Historical tensions go back to U.S. influence over Latin America during the Cold War. Anti-imperialist narratives resonate strongly in Venezuela's socialist political culture. U.S. interventions in the region are cited as evidence of exploitation. Despite this, some Venezuelans admire American democracy and opportunities, creating a split in opinion. Younger, urban populations are more likely to have nuanced views, while rural areas strongly absorb state propaganda. The overall narrative pushed by the government keeps anti-Americanism high. Thus, Venezuela's dislike is deeply tied to politics and economics rather than culture alone.
Number 4.
Iraq's dislike toward Americans is largely a result of the 2003 U.S.-led invasion that toppled Saddam Hussein. The war caused massive civilian casualties, infrastructure destruction, and years of instability. Many Iraqis blame America for the rise of extremist groups like ISIS, which emerged after the power vacuum left by the invasion. Anti-American sentiment is especially high among Shia militias aligned with Iran. U.S. military presence is still viewed as an occupation by some Iraqis. Civilian deaths from airstrikes and military operations have left deep scars. Political interference by the U.S. in Iraq's governance has fueled resentment. The perception that the war was motivated by oil exploitation adds to the anger. Pew surveys show unfavorable U.S. ratings often exceeding 70% in Iraq. While some Iraqis welcomed the removal of Saddam, many feel the aftermath brought more harm than good. Anti-American protests have erupted in Baghdad multiple times. Generational trauma ensures that distrust of the U.S. persists. However, there's also admiration for American technology and culture among younger Iraqis. The political wounds, though, dominate the national narrative.
Number 3.
China's dislike toward Americans is mostly political and economic, tied to growing global competition. Trade wars and technology bans have fueled anti-American sentiment among Chinese citizens. The U.S. support for Taiwan is seen as interference in China's sovereignty. Chinese state media frequently portrays America as a declining power trying to contain China's rise. Pew surveys show that unfavorable views of the U.S. among Chinese have risen significantly in the past decade. Military tensions in the South China Sea add to the distrust. Many Chinese believe U.S. criticism of human rights issues is hypocritical and politically motivated. Anti-American sentiment is fueled by nationalism, which the government promotes heavily. Despite political hostility, Chinese people admire American universities and innovation. However, propaganda paints America as chaotic and morally decaying. Cultural differences also contribute to misunderstandings between the two societies. U.S. visa restrictions and tech bans against Chinese companies have worsened public opinion. The growing rivalry between the two countries means anti-Americanism is likely to stay strong. While personal interactions with Americans may be positive, the national narrative remains wary and competitive.
Number 2.
Afghanistan's dislike toward Americans stems from decades of conflict involving the U.S. After September 11, the U.S. invaded Afghanistan to overthrow the Taliban, leading to 20 years of war. Civilian casualties from airstrikes and night raids left many Afghans resentful. While some appreciated efforts to rebuild the country, others saw it as foreign occupation. The U.S. withdrawal in 2021 was chaotic, leading to the Taliban's return, which many blame on America. Anti-American sentiment is especially high among conservative Afghans and Taliban supporters. Many view the U.S. as having disrespected Afghan culture and religion. Drone strikes killing civilians fueled further anger. The war also displaced millions and destroyed infrastructure. U.S. alliances with corrupt Afghan politicians added to the perception of exploitation. However, younger Afghans who had access to education programs funded by the U.S. often have mixed feelings. The humanitarian efforts are overshadowed by the war's devastation. Anti-Americanism remains strong, particularly in rural areas where violence was worst. The legacy of war ensures ongoing distrust toward Americans.
Number 1.
Palestinians have some of the strongest anti-American sentiments globally due to U.S. support for Israel. Many view the U.S. as complicit in the Israeli occupation and settlement expansions. Pew surveys consistently show unfavorable ratings toward America above 80% among Palestinians. The U.S. Embassy move to Jerusalem in 2018 angered Palestinians deeply. Military aid to Israel is seen as enabling violence against Palestinians. Decades of failed peace processes, often brokered by the U.S., have led to mistrust. Palestinians feel America is biased and not a neutral mediator. Cultural admiration for American music and tech exists but is overshadowed by politics. Anti-American protests are common across Gaza and the West Bank. U.S. vetoes at the UN against resolutions critical of Israel further anger Palestinians. Many associate America with colonial-style oppression. The ongoing humanitarian crisis fuels resentment among ordinary citizens. Generational trauma from displacement adds to the dislike. Until a fair solution is reached, anti-American sentiment in Palestine is likely to remain very high. Anti-American sentiment around the world is shaped by history, politics, war, and cultural differences. It's important to remember that not everyone in these countries hates Americans, but public opinion reflects real grievances that shouldn't be ignored. Understanding these perspectives helps us see the world beyond headlines and stereotypes. Which country's reason surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe for more global insights.